Welcome to the 10x integration video. If you're watching this, and this means that you've already selected your 10x program, you've already watched the tracking video, so you know what's involved in terms of tracking everything 10x. You've also completed the basic and requisite tests to ascertain your basic level. At minimum, you should have taken photos, you should have done a DEXA scan, or at least made an appointment. Also, by now, you already should have completed your baseline 10x test, which prepares you for your first 10x workout, which is what this video is all about. 10x integration is integrating 5 steps or elements that ensures that you get the most out of each workout, but also ensures progression throughout your training. Okay, this brings us to what we call the 5-step 10x routine cycle. Now, whether it's 10x or any other exercise program, but you should always take these 5 steps into account, or you should always fulfill these 5 steps if you're serious about making progress in your exercising efforts. Okay, what are these steps? So first of all, every exercise program should have some kind of a tracking style, right? What are you using to track your workouts? Okay, if you don't track your workouts, you don't know how well you're performing. And if you don't know how well you're performing, if you're not tracking, you're not going to know if you're progressing. So what is your tracking style? And there are 3 types. You are going to be tracking through an app, you're going to be tracking through video recording, or I'll show you that there are some cases where no tracking could actually be better. Okay, the second step is what we call preparation. Now, every training program should have a preparatory phase where you take the time to a 10 to 15 minute pre-ritual routine to get you into the best state of mind so that you can actually get the most out of each workout. Then you actually perform the workout itself. This is where focus and inter-routine flow and adaptability is extremely important in getting the most out of your program. Once you're done with your program, you're going to then take your results wherever you've recorded them, and then you're going to analyze them and make the appropriate adjustments for the next workout if necessary. And that's basically the 5-step 10x routine cycle. Okay, so moving on to the first step. So as I mentioned, the first step is all about selecting the mode or the tracking style of your workout. Now, before you go off to the gym or before you start your workout at home, you select one of 2 major tracking styles. Now, the most common style of tracking is what we call real-time tracking with an app. So as you're going throughout your workout, you track your weights, your reps, your sets as you go. Second way of tracking is what we call video analysis. So this is mostly done when at home. It's quite hard to do a video recording while you're training at the gym unless you have a training partner. But video analysis is ideal for when you're training at home or learning a new movement, or if you are sending your workouts to a coach to be analyzed. But the way that would work is that you set up a tripod at home where you have a panoramic view of your entire workout space. And so you click record, do your workout, and this is the benefit where you don't even have to count your reps because you can just watch the video later and then count your reps and look at your form after the fact. So like I said, video analysis is ideal for when you're at home and when you want to learn a new movement, or when you have a coach and you want to send your coach your workout videos. You can also do this in the gym, but then you need a training partner to record your videos. But most of the time you are going to be doing real-time tracking with an app, and I'm going to show you how to do that. In fact, if you watch most of my workouts online, you will actually see me do exactly that. Now, there is a type of training we call intuitive training. Again, this is mostly reserved for intermediate to advanced trainees, where you, in a sense, you get to a point where you don't need to track every workout. You track maybe every 4th or 5th workout, depending on how you feel. But intuitive training is where you have conditioned the felt sense of how each of the exercises should feel like. You know you don't need a clock or to track your workout to know you're going to get the most out of your workout. And so you do what we call intuitive training, where you don't actually track your workouts at all, or at least you don't track every single workout. You may track, let's say, every 4th or 5th workout to make sure that you are not, let's say, fooling yourself. Okay, so this slide, just hit pause and you can actually look at the differences. This is comparing real-time to video recording. The red shows you the downside. The green is the benefit of choosing each of the different tracking styles. And this is basically what it would look like. So you'd set up your routine. and you review your last workout. You press start your workout, you enter your values as you go, and you save your workout when you're done. Again, this is one of the most practical and efficient ways to do that, and each of the steps that you see here, like setting up your routine and reviewing your last workout, we will cover in just a bit. Video recording will look something like this. You'll set up a little tripod and record your video. Make sure that, of course, all your exercises will be in view, or you'll have to move your tripod around as you move through the exercise. Same thing, you'll set up your routine, your tripod, look at your last performance, and again, set targets in your head for the exercise you want to improve on for that workout. Press record, do your workout, and press stop when you're done, and you'll be ready for a post-video analysis. Okay, as I mentioned, intuitive exercise, this is where you select the weight and imagine this, right? So I do this quite often when I'm traveling. When I'm traveling, I'm not actually going to be tracking my workouts because the machines I'll be using in a different gym, they won't be the same. And so the numbers that I'm going to be using as informed by my tracking app won't be similar. Also, if I use the weights from different machines, which don't always correlate, and put it into my tracking app, it's actually going to screw up my numbers. So when I travel, I actually don't even track. What I do is I do what is called intuitive training. I select the weight, I do a few reps, I make sure that it's relatively heavy, and I just go all the way to failure. And it usually is still between 10 and 14 reps, but if not, if I overshoot, then I just go to absolute failure. And if I undershoot, meaning if I hit 9 reps or less, I'll take a break and I'll do a few more reps until I get to the minimum target of 12 full range reps. So the way you do this, you select your weight, you do a couple of reps, and then you adjust if necessary. If it felt too light, go to failure, repeat, and then do this for all 6 exercises. Okay, so that is step 1. Let's move on to step 2. Now, step 2 is really important. What is step 2 all about? It's all about preparing you. Now, the preparation phase should take just as long as your actual workout, right? Because the more prepared you are, the more you're going to get out of your workout. So I highly recommend that you take or establish a 10 to 15 minute pre-routine ritual, which is designed to help you maximize inter-routine flow, adaptability, as well as maximizing your overall performance throughout the routine. Okay, so what exactly are you going to be preparing? So first of all, you're going to set up all the exercises. If you are at home, set up all the exercises like a circuit before you start the workout. You don't want to be looking for equipment or changing equipment, changing different grips and things like that during your workout, right? This does waste your time. So make sure you set up all the different exercise equipment beforehand. You're going to then set up your timer, exercising, get your exercising app ready, music if you prefer, and you'll be ready to go. Next thing, and perhaps the most important, is what we call a mental review. And this is where you set targets. You're going to actually look at your previous workout performance. Now, if this is your first workout, right, you haven't done your first workout before, you're going to do the same thing. You're actually going to look at your 10x baseline test scores because you're using those numbers to inform your first workout. But even if it's not your first workout, every workout that you do, you actually review the previous week's performance or the previous workout's performance. For example, let's say your previous workout, you did 10 reps on your leg press on 120 kgs, for example. Your goal then is to do exactly 1 or 2 reps more. And so in your mind, you're going to be setting targets, right? This can take at least 3 to 5 minutes where you are reviewing the previous performance, your previous numbers, previous reps for each exercise, and you set targets of where you'd like to improve. Okay, so review previous performance and then you set targets. Then you do a quick warm-up, and so this can be in one of 2 forms. You can do some dynamic mobility, or you could do what I do, 5 reps as just for the first exercise. So if the first exercise is the leg press, I would literally select 60% of my workout weight. So let's say my workout weight was 100 kgs. I would select 60% as my warm-up weight, and I would just do 5 reps, okay? Just sort of preparing my mind, but I'm only doing it for the first exercise. I'm actually not doing a warm-up for any of the other exercises. Why? Because by the time I get to my second exercise, I'll be warm. By the time I'm by my third exercise, I'm like, there's no need for warm-up. Okay, so I only do that for the first exercise. So as I mentioned, you prepare all your equipment, make sure the exercise position is correct, and you prepare the exercise load. Now imagine if you're at the gym, hopefully if it's quiet, you can pretty much go set up all the different machines ahead of time. If you are fortunate enough to have these machines at home, same thing. You set up all the machines, the positions, the seat, the angles, the load or the weight. You set it up before you even start. So when you press start, you can just go from one exercise to the next. Okay. Tools. Okay, have an exercise timer. Now you will either use your phone when you're at a commercial gym, or you can set up a clock, right, that you can have on the wall in your gym, right? This is ideal because you can then ideally have the clock on the wall where you have visibility for all the different exercises. You can also then make sure you prepare your exercise app. So open it up. And again, of course, you're going to be reviewing your previous workout performance with the app. So open that up, prepare that. You can also prepare your music if you do listen to music like I do when I do the workout. And of course, if you're going to do the video, if you're doing a video tracking style, you're going to be needing the tripod, setting all that up, and things like that. Then we do, okay, so the next thing we prepare is going to be your mental state. Now, this is perhaps the most important thing you want to prepare. And this involves a couple of things. Number one, review your previous performance. Again, if you did, let's say, if you did 10 pull-ups the last week, you're going for 11 pull-ups today. So you're setting a target. You're looking to see what went wrong in the previous workout, and you are setting targets. And then give yourself a minute to visualize actually hitting all of those targets. Okay? Never rush into an exercise. Don't rush into your workout. The biggest mistake that people make is that they don't spend as much time preparing or setting an intention for their workout before they start. And so they literally go into a workout haphazardly, unprepared, equipment all over the place, and you can only imagine the kind of results. That's why this is why when people ask, well, how are you able to get such amazing results in such a short period of time? Well, technically speaking, it's not only 15 minutes, because we spend about 10 to 15 minutes really just preparing ourselves, treating each workout almost like an Olympic event, right? We take it very, very seriously, because especially if we do it only once a week, every second counts. Okay, then we move on to the warm-up. Now you can do some dynamic mobility, and there are many routines to choose from. You can do 1 to 2 minutes. Again, warm-up is highly dependent also on the environment, the temperature of the environment, right? So if it's really cold, I would spend more time warming up, right? Especially do more dynamic mobility. I should spend 5 to 10 minutes. But in summer, for example, I would always walk to the gym, and so by the time I get to the gym, for example, I would be fully warm, and I don't need any dynamic mobility. I might even have jogged a little bit to the gym, or whatever the case may be, but I'm quite warm. So it's all about body temperature. If your body feels tight and tense, I would recommend spend more time warming up. So the warm-up duration is directly proportionate to how comfortable you feel, how loose you feel, and also body temperature. Okay. All right, so now let's move on to the third step of the 5-step 10x routine cycle. So what we've done is you've selected your tracking style. So let's say we're going to do real-time tracking on the app. Then we've taken all the preparatory steps to get us in the best mental state possible so that we can get the most out of the workout. And now we actually execute the workout. Okay, so step 3 is all about doing the workout. Now, if we're going to get the most out of our workout, we have to pay attention to the following things. Okay, 2 things specifically: how we perform each of the exercises and how quickly we move from one exercise to the next. Okay, so this is very, very important, because I don't want you to get just because we want to do the workout as quickly as we can doesn't mean we rush the exercises. It's the opposite. We really take our time when we execute the movement. In fact, we always do 5 seconds per rep, right? So you can't rush. So every exercise will always be 1 minute or more. And so we really, really take our time in producing the best effort we possibly can in that minute. But then we don't waste time moving from one exercise to the next. Okay, so when it comes to the performing each exercise, we have to think about the form, make sure the acute exercise variables are done correctly. This has to do, and I'll show you what that means in a second, but this basically talks about the cadence and the load and all of that. Focus, and of course, breathing. Now, if you haven't even done your first 10x workout, this is a lot to remember, but don't worry. If you have a good coach, or if you are constantly if you're constantly tracking your workouts, you will be sort of adding greater layers of complexity with each of your workouts, where you can make sure you've got good form, and then you've got perfect focus, and then you have to add breathing, and you'll be adding each of these layers one workout at a time, and you'll get better and better and better with each workout that you perform. In terms of the intersect rest, it really has to do with your exercise environment, right? The goal, the objective is pretty simple. Move from one exercise to the next as quickly as possible. There's no specific rest allocated between exercises. The rest is as long as it takes for you to get to the next exercise. The faster the better. Why? Because then your workout time comes down. When your workout time comes down, your power score goes up. So what determines your intersect rest? Well, the exercise environment. So if you're at a gym, exercise machines might be far apart. Also, the machines might be occupied, so you would have to either change the exercise, or you would have to wait for someone to finish their set on the machine so you can do your your exercise. Also, it depends on your tracking style and the setup. Let's quickly take a look at each of those. Okay, so looking at your exercise performance, there are 4 variables to consider. First is your form. What's the exercise technique with which you execute each exercise? Technique before consistency, and consistency before intensity, which means make sure that you can execute the movement comfortably and without pain, with good form. Then you can do so with consistency at a light load. And then, of course, we start to add the intensity. Now, that obviously we've already covered in the baseline 10x test, which means that's exactly what that 10x test is for. We are learning the movements, we get consistency in the performance of those movements at a very specific intensity, which is going to be the same. Now, as soon as you start to deviate from from the standard, that's when you stop and terminate the exercise set, and you count the number of reps with good exercise technique. You don't count the reps even with slight deviation from your form. A good coach can obviously point this out, but also taking a video of yourself in your first workout is highly valuable in spotting this. Okay. Now, every exercise has a particular muscle action pattern. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Every exercise has a muscle action pattern. It has a positive and a negative, and that positive and negative is going to be done at a very specific cadence, and it's going to be executed at a very specific intensity. Okay. Now, this is the formula of 10x really is embedded in this specific acute exercise variable template, which is 5 seconds per rep for at least 12 repetitions. And so you fail on the 13th rep. And each rep where you do about a 1 to 2 second positive and a 3 second negative, which we have already seen. Now, if you fail at 9 reps or below, that was what we call a over-selected set, what's too heavy. You do a rest pause technique, you rest for 15 seconds, more or less. Or if you feel good at 5 seconds, that's also fine. But roughly 15 seconds you rest, and then you complete the remaining number of reps. So let's say if you failed at 9, that is an indication that you need to do rest pause, you rest for 15 seconds and complete the remaining 4 reps. So there'll be 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So at minimum 12 reps per set. However, if the load that you selected for your first workout was too light, you're going to be exceeding 12 reps. Okay, so if you do 14 or more reps, then that was too light. But you don't just stop at 12 or 13 or 14 because we say so. You go until you hit failure, meaning you cannot do another concentric repetition, even if your life depended on it. So you go to failure, even if it's too light. Okay, but of course, the sweet spot is to fail between 10 and 14 reps. If you fail at 9, too heavy, you rest, make up the rest, and the next exercise you'll actually make it a little bit lighter. Similarly, if it's too light, let's say you do 14 or more reps easily, you need to make it heavier in the next workout. Okay. Focus. I cannot overstate the importance of your focus and staying mentally engaged with the exercise. Don't talk, don't look around, and don't be too distracted even with your music. But focus is everything, right? You're focused on a couple of things. You're focused on the cadence of the movement, and you're also focused on the target number of repetitions that you're going for, and you're trying to focus on the muscle-mind connection, okay? It's quite a lot to think about, but you'll be surprised that after a while, you'll be able to actually think of all three of these things at the same time. You're focusing on the cadence, making sure that it's 2 seconds positive, 3 seconds negative. You're going for a specific target rep range because let's say in your previous set you did 11 chest presses. Now you know you're going for 12. So in your mind you're going for 12. Your cadence is exactly synced, and also your mind is in the actual target muscle. Okay, because remember the whole goal is to stimulate an adaptive response within that target muscle, and so that's the focus. And then breathing is very interesting. You do what we call organic negatives, meaning you don't manipulate your breathing when you do the negative phase. So what would be the negative phase for a chest press? So if I'm pushing, this is the positive. In the negative phase, I don't manipulate my breathing. However, when I do the positive, meaning when I push or when I exert, I'm going to be doing hyperventilated positives. And I relax in the negative phase. And now, again, this is a lot to remember, but every workout you'll be integrating each of these different elements with more skill and with more focus and efficiency. So that's how you perform each of the exercises. Okay, again, this is just a slide covering the exact formula that makes up 10x in terms of the execution of each exercise. The load is 65% of your 1 repetition maximum, where you reach concentric failure within 12 reps, meaning you fail on the 13th rep is the perfect set. That's exactly 60 seconds. However, if you fail at 10, that's okay. If you fail at 14, that's fine. You stay on the same weight until that changes. The rep cadence is always 5 seconds. You can do roughly 1 to 2 second positive, a fast positive, a slow negative, a 1 second pause in the most challenging angle of the exercise, never resting in the locked out position between reps, aiming for minimum continuous 60 seconds of time under continuous tension. That is the formula of each of the 10x exercises. Okay, in terms of the interset rest, okay, so on average it's about 20 to 60 seconds. It sounds long, but you'll actually be surprised how much time is lost moving from one exercise to the next, especially in the gym. But if you're training at home, you shouldn't take longer than 30 seconds to move from one exercise to the next. Again, environment dictates the rate at which you can move from one exercise to the next. And of course, the way that you're tracking is also going to determine this. Now, if you're tracking with the app in real time as you're doing your workout, as you're moving to the next exercise, pick up your phone, enter your values of the exercise you just did. So let's say you just did, dips. Let's say you did 11 dips, you put in 11 dips. You put note if you need to, put your phone down, do the next exercise. Of course, setup, location determines your interset flow. Like I just told you, at home, you will have less interruptions. At the gym, you might have the machines that are occupied and you have to wait, or you can either alternate. And of course, many times you'll see that you'll set up a machine, and then by the time you get there, let's say, the machine, the apparatus grip is altered or something like that, and then you have to change it again, and that can waste time. Either way, keep your resting period under 60 seconds. Okay, so moving on to the fourth step of the 5-step 10x routine cycle, what we call tabulation. Now, again, just a quick review, why this is so important. Now, whether it's 10x or any other exercise methodology, you need to implement some version of this 5-step routine cycle to get the most out of your workouts and to ensure that you have maximum visibility into your rate of progression. Okay, so tabulation is one of the most important steps. This is where we take data from your actual workout, from step 3, and this is where we transfer it into a sheet of your choice or into the sheet that we've created for you so that you have maximize your progression visibility. Let's take a look. Okay, as I mentioned, tabulation is about taking post-workout data and integrating that into a sheet of your choosing, or a sheet we've developed for you, so that you can maximize the visibility into what's going on with your workouts. Are you improving or are you not? And looking for opportunities for improvement in the next workout. Now, there are two ways that you can do this. Again, either depending on the tracking style, if it was real-time tracking with an app or with a video, you are going to basically take data from the app, transfer it to your tracking template in the sheet. Likewise, if you had a video, you'd be watching the video, and as you're watching the video, you'll be inputting the data into the sheet as you go. Okay, more or less this is what it will look like. You take the data from the workout that you've just completed. Again, preferably you do this on the same day, directly after your workout. You enter it into the sheet. Again, if you have a coach, the beauty of having a 10x coach is your coach does this for you. And of course, the minimum variables you need to ensure you are tracking everything. We need to know that you are progressing at the rate that you should, but also that we can spot opportunities for progress are the date, your body weight, total workout time, the exercise type, exercise load per exercise, not just the total reps, but also unbroken reps, and rating of perceived exertion or performance. So these are the minimum variables you will need, whether you use our sheet or your sheet, to know exactly what the power to weight ratio score was for your workout. Okay, moving on to the fifth and final step of the 5-step 10x routine cycle. So step one, you select the primary tracking style. So let's say you select in real-time tracking with an app. Perfect. Now you know how you're going to track your workout. You basically implement your pre-workout ritual where you set up all the exercises, you review your previous performance, you do the appropriate warm-ups, set a target for what you would like to achieve for that workout, you set an intention, then you execute your workout, you track that workout, you take the data from that workout in the app, transfer it to your preferred sheet, and then now we are ready to analyze the data so that we can look for opportunities for progression, or we need to make the necessary corrections to get the most out of our future workouts. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so when we analyze the workouts, what we're really looking to do is to make certain corrections or certain adjustments based on our performance. And so there are really three ways that we can adjust our workouts or our routines to maximize our performance. So the first is what we call intensity or load. This is where we either correct or progress in an exercise set. So for example, if an exercise was too heavy, we fell at 9 or below, we need to correct for it. So we need to lower the weight or make the exercise make it easier so that we fail between 10 and 14. Likewise, if we exceed 14 or more reps, 2 workouts in a row or even more workouts in a row, then we want to increase the load or make the exercise more difficult so that we can fail within a 10 and 14 range. So that would mean we progress in the exercise set. So progression really means that we increase the exercise intensity in proportion to our rate of progress, as indicated by doing more than 14 reps of an exercise. The next way that we can adjust an exercise or routine is through changing the exercises, but not the order of the exercises. We just change the exercise type. So instead of doing chest press, we could let's say do a bodyweight dip, or instead of doing lat pull down, for example, we could do a pull up. So this is where we change certain exercises to overcome certain exercise specific adaptation resistance. All right, and the next, the third and final way that we can make an adjustment to our program or actual workout routine is through volume. We can either add more routines, what we call beta or gamma routines, or we can actually remove some routines if we have too many. So let's take a look at each of those. Okay, so what is what we call an intensity or load adjustment? This is one of the most common ways we are going to be looking at all of our workouts. Okay, so we are constantly looking to either correct or progress in an exercise. So as the name suggests, this is where we adjust the load in proportion to the degree of deviation from the target practice range. So as I mentioned, there are what we call 2 rules. The first one is the 2-for-2 rule. You increase the intensity whenever a 10x set reaches or exceeds 14 full range reps, 2 reps above the minimum 12 rep target, 2 identical routines in a row. So very simple. Again, as I mentioned before, I probably sound like a broken record by now, but if you select a certain load and you can do 14 or more reps of that exercise and you do that 2 workouts in a row, it's time to increase the intensity by way of making the exercise more difficult or increasing the weight so that you still fail between 10 and 14. Okay, let's quickly take a look at an example of the 2-for-2 rule where we would increase the intensity for the next workout, assuming we did a certain amount of reps. Okay, so let's say we did 14 reps for the squat, 2 workouts in a row. We would then we would increase the first squat set by about 5% to 1 plate. So for example, if I did a leg press at 160 kgs and paying attention only to total reps here, let's say I did 14 reps in one go, and this was the second time that I did it, for example, then I would actually go to 170 kgs in my leg press for the next workout, and so that's how that would work. Okay, so the next way is what we call the 3-for-2 rule. This is where we make a certain exercise or intensity correction. Okay, exercise correction is where we decrease the intensity whenever a 10x set terminates at or before 9 full range reps or 3 reps below the minimum 12 rep target. Also for 2 identical routines in a row. Now the exception is exercises you repeat in the second circuit. So this is very, very important to understand. I'm going to show you this now. Okay, let's quickly take a look at the 3-for-2 rule example, or what we call intensity correction. This is where we decrease the load or the exercise difficulty so that we can fail between 10 and 14 and not fail at 9 or below. Okay, so let's say quickly, for example, now remember the way this works is you do a squat, a pull, and a push. You do a squat, a pull, and a push. And so we always, the weight for the load for the first exercise will always be the same for the second round. Okay, we don't change the load ever. So if you choose 160 kg for your leg press in the first squat set, you don't change the load. It's still going to be 160. Now, remember I said that there's an exception to the 3-for-2 rule, and here it is. So let's say we do 12 reps on 160. Well, that's perfect. We fail at 12. But now, obviously, we're not going to fail at 12 for the second round because we're pre-fatigued. So we're going to fail at 9, and then we can do 15, a rest pause technique, or 15 seconds rest, and then we complete the remaining 3. No problem there. However, let me show you an example of, let's say, for example, we did a shoulder press for the last exercise. Let's say we only did 8. Now, that's below 9. Now, what we would have to do is actually drop 40 to 30 kgs in order to fail between 10 and 14. Okay, so that's how that would work. Again, I address this in a separate video in more detail so you can see exactly how we do both intensity progression as well as intensity correction. Okay, so the second way that we can introduce variety in our workouts as a way to stimulate potential for progression or growth is through exercise variety. This is simply where we take a specific exercise that targets a specific exercise group and change that exercise. So for example, the 2 most common ways that we do this is, so instead of doing a chest press, we would do a bodyweight dip, and instead of doing lat pull down, we would do pull-ups, for example. And the reason we do this is because sometimes we would experience what we call exercise-specific adaptation resistance. This is where for 4 or more workout routines in a row, we don't see any progress in an exercise. This is a good time to, let's say, exchange one exercise for another. But again, this happens very, very seldom. So there are three ways we can do this. The first way is what we call Optimus variety. Now, remember, Optimus means training twice a week, and variety is where we can actually introduce some variety in the second workout of that week. So let's say, for example, we do two identical workouts in the same week. So for example, let's say we do chest press Monday, chest press Thursday. Instead of doing chest press Thursday again, we can actually just do body weight dip. But then remember, what we want to do is keep every Thursday we do chest, let's say body weight dip, and every Monday we do the chest press for the chest exercise, for example. This is just showing you how we can introduce some variety into our routines. Plateau variety, as I mentioned, is that if we perform four exercises. So if we perform a specific given exercises for 4 workouts in a row and we see no progress, no movement, that's another good reason that we can, let's say, alternate different exercises targeting the same muscle group. We call this the 1 for 4 rule. So for every 4 routines where we don't see progress in a specific exercises, all things being equal, then we can make an alteration. Also, we have adaptable variety. This is, again, more specific to intermediate to advanced trainees who are, well equipped to be able, let's say, specifically in a gym environment, if one exercise is used, they know exactly what alternative exercise they could do instead, and they can do so well, and they also have previous numbers they want to improve on for that specific exercise. Another way is when you're learning a new exercise, you can, this is when you bring in some variety. So let's say, for example, anytime you're going to do alternate an exercise for the first time, you'll be learning a new exercise, or whenever you feel like variety. But again, only for intermediate and advanced trainees. When you feel like variety, you can introduce the variety because you've already got foundational strength in all the previous baseline exercises. Okay, and the last and final way that we can make an adjustment to our program or routines is either by changing, adding, or subtracting volume to our program. And 2 very good reasons we would do this is if we want to address certain muscle group imbalances, or we just want to address, outright plateaus. This is a good way to do that. But really, you would only see a plateau in 6 months to a year, if that, because if you control every variable very, very closely, you would find that you still make progress even on the smallest scale, like I do. I've been doing the same workout for 3 years now, and I'm still making incremental progress. Even if it's just an improvement in run repetition, let's say on my squat for the entire workout, I see my power to weight ratio go up, right, incrementally. So you really will rarely experience a plateau if you're tracking and controlling all of your variables. Now, 3 ways that we can subtract or add or, change the volume of our program is first resistance volume. So if you've been on a home workout, the quickest way to, improve or to maximize opportunities for progression is to switch from a home to a gym program, because your work quality will just almost double if you do that. And again, I address the concept of work quality in a separate video. Another way is what we call muscle group volume. This is where you can either, again, add or subtract a beta gamma routine that targets very specific muscle groups that may or may not have experienced direct resistance, such as biceps or triceps or the glutes, calves, and things like that. So sometimes we have seen if people add a bit more volume, like targeting those specific areas that could either interfere with the alpha routines, and sometimes it could really improve. So you have to experiment with these volume changes. Another way is what we call program volume. This is simply where you add or subtract an alpha routine from your program. Now, if you're only doing one alpha routine per week, by definition, you're on the 10x minimus program where you're doing one routine per week. Maybe adding a second routine would be the best thing for you to stimulate potential for progression. Likewise, if you are training twice a week, maybe you're not recovering sufficiently between workouts, and so the best thing you could do is maybe subtract your alpha routine, where you're only doing then one alpha routine per week. In fact, right now I am on a 10x minimus routine where I only perform the alpha routine once every Monday, and I'm still seeing progress. And there you have it. If you want to see exactly how I go about making these intensity, variety, and volume-based adjustments, there's a separate video that you can go and watch. But this is what we call the 5-step 10x routine cycle. I'll see you in your first 10x workout.